that it for? Oh, one more. No.
Well, it might maybe under the question of important opportunities, but mainly, how are you sure that what you are building in ICT is going to facilitate the life of citizens and enterprises in your country or in Europe? I mean, I'm an e-government manager. I get salespeople from different ICT companies all the time with their products, and I have to find out if that's something I can use or not. I want you to do the job and tell me, hey, you've got a problem, here's a solution.
That does, okay. That's the last bullet. Well, that's the last bullet from one particular point of view, and you're suggesting additional points of view. How do end users participate? Let's go. All right. Carlos. Brief introduction.
Do I have the slides there?
You do.
No, I was explaining.
Okay.
Likely to be successful.
You've been briefed on our slides.
So, is it any of them?
Yeah, second one. Okay. So, good morning. Carlos Ralli from Telefónica R&D. I'm one of the architects of the FI-WARE project, right? Specifically, I'm the IoT architect. And I wanted to make a very short introduction to this project that is a software platform, right? That is actually the core platform of the Future Internet PPP program. And I want to focus on how we are trying to cover the gap between the European innovation and the young entrepreneurs, developers, etc. So that will be my focus. I'm actually using the set of slides that we were using to introduce FI-WARE to the participants in our hackathons, right? They are always young people, young developers, very fresh, very, let's say, far from our research scene, right? Where I believe too. And the point is that, what is FI-WARE? Well, FI-WARE is a platform of platforms, right? It has a platform of cloud, it has an IoT platform, it has a big data platform, all together with coherent APIs, and this we plan to install in a future internet data center, right, to offer to the developers. As simple as that. I think one of our main assets, besides the enablers themselves, is the open APIs that we are building. They are all based on REST and normally XML, JSON, right, because this is what developers are used to play with, right? You all know a lot about platforms, so I will not get into a lot of details there. Then sorry, there is the FI-Lab. The FI-Lab is a practical implementation of this FI-WARE platform. FI-WARE is not a platform that you download to your mobile or to your desktop and then you play with it, right, or to your servers in the company. It's something that you deploy normally in a big data center, and this is where the infrastructures come, right? We will need more infrastructures in the future to deploy similar instances as the FI-WARE is, right? So FI-Lab is an instance, right, where the developers can instantiate their virtual machines because they are the cloud enablers, right? So it hosts their applications. But the most important is not only the enablers that they can find there, that are IoT, big data, etc., but the ecosystem that we are building, right? We are believers that the most important is what we offer to the end users, right? Which are these developers, right? So the platform looks like this. This is very simple. Of course, we have the architecture diagrams that are impossible to understand for these entrepreneurs, and they don't want to see that, right? And there is a central element that is a context broker, that is just a broker of context notifications, right? This is like a central element that connects everything. It's based on the OMA NGSI standard that we are pushing within the project. And what we have is the enablers of applications that allow the people to do their own applications, do the front ends with, for instance, a web mashup, and offer this in a marketplace. Then the IoT part, okay, to connect the world to the project, and then we have smart cities that are getting connected, I will show, and also smart spaces like smart buildings, etc. Then there is a cloud. We are basing our solution there in OpenStack, right? And then the data, where we use big data enablers. And one of the things of particular of FI-WARE is that we are using normally key assets of European companies, right? So for instance, IBM is contributing with their complex event processing. That is actually the one that they use for their commercial services, right? So we pretend not to build things from scratch that later when the project ends will be just there alone, right? And then to the data, we are connecting open data from cities, right? This is for the smart cities topic, but we are also trying to connect other kind of industries. But we are still on the way. So what's connected to the FI-Lab? What we're doing regarding the ecosystem? We have started with some cities in Spain, for instance. We have Santander, Seville, Zaragoza, and Malaga. They are connecting open data, going from the typical temperature, humidity, quality of air, but also with things like how is the public bikes usage, where are bikes available, for instance. Also the plaques distribution in the city when there are rats plaques or insect plaques, etc. So they have a lot of data, right, that they are offering to the developers. And this is what is available in our platform in an easy way for these developers. We also connect the different hackathons that we make. So the FI-Lab was inaugurated by Nelly Cross in September this year, and we connected the hackathon of Campus Party, and last week the hackathon in Santander. So just 2 slides. The hackathon on the Campus Party was pretty successful. There, you know, it's a massive event with more than 6,000 developers. These are very young people. The FI-Lab was inaugurated there by the commissioner, and the first prize, for instance, was given to a group of 3 17-year-old guys that have a startup, right? And an 18-year-old guy also in the group that was the only one able to get the prize because it was the only guy, the only one over 18 years old. And these guys, it's very sad to listen to them. They are totally disconnected from our work. They say, yeah, for my startup, for my projects, I use the Google APIs, the Facebook APIs, the Twitter APIs, but they know nothing about European technology. And they were pretty happy to say, the European Union is doing something. They offer us a cloud where we can put our virtual machines, we can develop the technology, etc. And then the hackathon last week, for instance, we gave these 4 prizes. And from these 4 prizes, 3 are actually startups that have said, we are not only interested in the prize, this is just one starting point. We want to use the FI-WARE technology for our startups. So let's make a deal, let's make an agreement, because we want to use it. It's very fresh, and I think we are doing a great job connecting these young entrepreneurs with the European innovation. Last slide is why we are here, is because we are a software platform but that needs to be deployed in data centers. And we need to improve also the way there. I mean, regular data centers have their problems, and we need future internet infrastructures, we need federations of infrastructures to deploy our field apps there, let's say. And that's it. Sorry.
But I need the list. I don't think we're in alphabetical order, so what order are we in? How do I get back to... No, I have to do more than that.
Alt tab. Alt tab. Alt and tab.
Alt and tab.
Yeah.
Here we are. Maurizio, I believe you are next, and introduce yourself, and we'll move on.
Hello, my name is Maurizio Cecchi from Telecom Italia. I'm responsible for the collaborative research. Now we are trying to find my presentation. That is not this one. Okay, so I'm here to talk about XiFi, that, as you know, is the infrastructure project for the public-private partnership future internet program. As you know, the program is based on 3 phases. So on the first phase, there is a FI-WARE project that has been presented by Carlos, that is the platform, and so where you developed all the enablers. Then there have been 8 specific use cases in 8 specific domains giving requirements to develop the general enablers. And while XiFi is belonging to the second phase, where there is the infrastructure supporting all the program, according to what said Carlos before, and 5 large trials in 5 domains, energy, health, and so on. So, of course, XiFi is a project that is closer to the FIRE environment because we have a similar problems, requirements, strategy, and for sure in the future the collaboration will grow and grow. Of course, to do this, we built an initiative that is really public-private. So there are large telcos offering infrastructure. Beside Telecom Italia, there is Deutsche Telekom, Orange, now it's not anymore France Telecom, but Orange, Telefónica, and big software developers that also belongs to the FI-WARE initiative. And then we have also the public part that is represented by Dante Jean, offering really the European connectivity, national agency, national entrance like HINET, Rezo Test and other, and also regional like Trentino Network, regional infrastructure contributing in terms of capacity to the whole infrastructure. So it was a really European initiative that, as you know, was built in the first phase on the basis on Infinity. Infinity was a support action, thinking and putting concepts and objectives to the whole, with XiPi, that is the database of infrastructure that had been developed inside the project. So we built this in terms of operation or real infrastructure on the basis of what has been discussed in the first phase. So our goal is to develop a process of adapting, upgrading existing infrastructure. Of course, we are not investing in new infrastructure. The real problem is to put together public and private one, supporting in real term the services and application of future internet of the whole program. So, through our infrastructure, as has been anticipated by Carlos, you will find, we will be operational from March 2014, all the general enablers that have been developed in FI-WARE, some specific enablers that are specific domain enablers from the 5 big trials projects, testing environment, of course, FiLab, that is an essential part of the program. So you can access all these capacities of the different infrastructure. You can choose which of one you want to use, and then you will use all the tools, software components that you need to build new application and services. So inside the phase 3, that, as you know, there is a call of tender that will expire at the beginning of December. There will be this large consortium that will promote the service and application toward SMEs and web entrepreneurs. And so we will be ready for that time to offer this to enable them to develop what they want. This is said. By the way, there is an open call from XiFi because we will see, we started. Sorry? And so we have an open call that is open to everybody to join the consortium. So the idea is to have general enablers, tools, the capacity to support the larger trials and then to support the phase 3 project. This is the expectation, 800 of web developers in phase 3. And of course, in the future, for sustainability in the long term, the smart cities this is a complement to FI-WARE with smart cities, so public administration want to launch public services with heavy capacity infrastructure in the future. So, what the developers will find, so compare and browse these software libraries of enablers, leverage on the infrastructure, have an easy access management and monitoring, that of course is an essential part as in other infrastructure on there. And also we have a heavy part on tutorial, training, webinars to help these people, because of course we cannot support them one by one. This is the main structure that I said to you, so where you can find. The 5 nodes now at the moment are in Ireland, France, Spain, Germany, and Italy, are the core nodes. that are supported by telcos and public infrastructure, so large data center also with specific capacities there. But we want, and this is the part when we're building in the first year of the project. XiFi is at 24 months. In the second year, we will enlarge it to 16 nodes through Europe through this open call that is now open. We will be also in Vilnius for further discussion, but of course there is an invitation for all of you, because most of you represent infrastructure, to join XiFi. We have a large budget with more than 2 million euros for this, and so you are welcome to become a partner.
It's good.
Your size, right?
Okay, now you know the rules.
Yeah. I know. So, good morning. I'm Brecht Vermeulen. I'm in FI-PPP project. I'm the leader of the architecture work package. And at iMinds locally, I'm the technical manager of the test lab. So FI-PPP is about federation of fire testbeds. So you see on the slide a lot of testbeds which are involved from the beginning in FI-PPP. So important is that all those testbeds do exist already before, or did exist already before the project. As an experimenter you can go to them and you can use them. Although you have to use the native interfaces for them. So one of the important things of FI-PPP is to have a kind of tool set which can be used on all the testbeds, so that as an experimenter you can go to all the testbeds in the same manner, in an easy manner, and so on. So the project has started last year. We are now about 1 year in the project. What is important on this one is that we are working in 3 cycles. So in each cycle we do development and we do deployment and operations. And we also have 2 open calls which are aligned with those cycles. Open calls are both for experimenters, for doing experiments, and also for new facilities. So that's what we are doing in the timeline. So to give an idea about cycle 1, which is now almost finished. So the things in blue, so we are trying to get 50 shades of blue in this slide, but the things in blue are things which are done in the first cycle of FI-PPP. So on top you see the different testbeds. At the left side you see different properties. For instance, deploying an SFA AM is just an API, deploying OML for measurement and so on. So we try to standardize on those sets of APIs, and we try to get them adopted on all those testbeds. So this is where we are now in the first cycle. Very important also, if you want to do that, is doing testing and integration of facilities. So we do have those cycles of describing what we want to do, developing what we want to do, testing per testbed what we want to have as an API, and then also do continuously automatic nightly testing to see that if testbeds do upgrade their software, that they are still compliant with those APIs. So we have detailed test reports of that, so that we can go to testbeds and say, well, this is wrong in your current implementation. So for instance, this one gives some wrong things. Very important also is for doing that federation that you have a common first level support, so that experimenters can go to one single place where they get support. So this is run by Dante. What they have done is developed flowcharts to see if an experimenter comes in with a problem, how should we redirect them. Of course, Dante does not answer all questions very technically on testbeds, but they do have the escalation schemes to contact the right persons at the testbed. So this is what is shown here. There's also a dashboard. So here at left side you see all the testbeds. You see different things that we try to monitor. We also visualize the internal monitoring of the testbeds. And this is a dashboard that can be used by the first level support, but also by the experimenters. So if they go to a particular testbed, they should see, is it available or not? What are the number of free resources at the moment, for instance? Opportunity and next steps. So what we have learned today is getting those common APIs implemented on all testbeds is just enabling tools to get developed for speaking to all those testbeds. So if you have a common set of APIs, you can develop tools which can be used on all testbeds. And this is a first step. We there see that this is currently the biggest gap in the thing. So to get usable tools, to get tools which hide complexity for testbeds, uniform facility access, for instance, not having a VPN for each testbed which differs from side to side and things like that. And what we will do next also is, based on those monitoring and compliance testing, that we are trying to get to exploring SLA, reputation, advanced elevation, and things like that. So this means, for instance, if you want to use testbeds for education, and you know that you have a practical exercise within 2 months on 3 afternoons, you need those resources at that moment. So at that moment you say, I want to reserve them, but I want to also have a kind of SLA to know that they will be available at that moment. And this is my last sentence. Thank you.
Who's next? Jarmo is next. Okay. Are you sliding or are you?
No, I don't have a slide.
I'm very pleased about that.
Hi, Jarmo Eskelinen from European Network of Living Labs and Forum Virium Helsinki. Short introduction. First about Forum Virium, which is the organization which pays my salary. That's not. Don't look at the slides. There are no slides. We are a Helsinki-based innovation company, part of the CTF Helsinki group. And for this context, I would like to emphasize the growth coaching program which we have. We have coached during the past 8 years, 280 companies for growth. So we do have quite extensive knowledge of what digital entrepreneurs need. And I will make a claim now that I'm not sure if future internet offers at all. Second, European Network of Living Labs, which is the international network of user-driven innovation actors, innovation organizations. It's already, I think that's also 8 years old. That's a long time. Quite old, strong international network, over 300 members, of which I would say a quarter, 80 or so, is capable of international collaboration work. So not all living labs are doing international collaboration, but quite a few of them are. Which is now extending also outside Europe, and it might be that we change the name to Global Network of Living Labs. And basically what Living Lab means, what we do, is user-driven open innovation in real-life contexts, where people are spending their time in cities, homes, workplaces, etc. Toolboxes, methods, and practical ways to work with the users. I will get to the 3 questions immediately. There's one point I want to start with, and that's why does internet innovation come from the US and not from Europe? And I think there's a fundamental point that ICT innovation and internet innovation are actually 2 different beasts. And Europe has been good in ICT innovations and mobile innovations, but not good at internet innovations. And one of the reasons is that internet innovations are very sort of stubbornly stuck to ideas of openness, agility, flexibility to support fast scaling. So most really successful internet companies have business models which were radically open when they were introduced. And we are not good at that. European companies mostly are not very good at that. So de facto standards monopolies are created very fast by using this model. That's the story of Google. I mean, in a few years, it basically conquered the search marketplace with mostly open approach. And I think one of the questions we should discuss in future internet community is which areas here are such which will not be, as from business point of view, managed with the things already there, with the regular internet. I think quite a few use cases I've seen are things which are already being launched as a business. There are lots of transport things we are discussing in these projects. And there's Uber there, using regular internet technologies, valued at $10 billion at the moment, taking over the big metropolis of the world, offering a superb transport app. There's nothing future internet in it. It uses just regular internet. And it will conquer that market to some extent. Of course there will be competition, but I think we should be careful to check that we use our resources in those areas which need the future internet technologies and will not be managed by the tech already out there. So what's changing? I think the key why this is all very interesting is that technology is becoming an everyday asset for everybody. So we are all using smart tech, meaning that all user communities are becoming more capable and more resourceful. There are more and more connections between real and virtual environments, and most of the development is driven by developers. And why is that? It's because the more complex the surroundings are, the less possible it is to actually predict which are the winning innovations. The more developers we have, the more sort of failed attempts we have, the more certain it is that we will find the users, so the winning body. So I think the key point for whichever we do is to make sure that as many companies as possible are being created, as many new solutions as possible are being launched, and as many of those fail as possible. Because out of the 100, one will be the winner, one will be the supercell. Okay? Changing demands of users, there's one point here which I want to make, and that's that user is an active practitioner, and user communities can do things which are utterly impossible otherwise, and that will grow. Think of a very everyday example like Wikipedia. It couldn't have been published by any publishing company, yet it is there and we use it. No company would have had the money. And more those models will be happening, and the society should take advantage of that. Users are different groups, but they expect tools for active participation. And the most important opportunities towards 2020, for Living Labs, I would like to see us as the bridge between the technology and the users, and as something which the different service providers, cities and other practitioners will see as a valuable tool. And we see the first developments in that. I won't go into detail there. So just remember, users are a resource. That's the key point here. And Europe should be interoperable. That's maybe the other key issue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Do you have slides, or I'm redundant again?
So, thanks for introducing me. Hello everybody, my name is Udo Bub. I'm with EIT-ICT Labs. It's an organization that is quite young, however it has been existing already since 2009. So when Scott and Michael sent us the questions over email, I asked the question myself to Scott, should I send a PowerPoint pack? I have PowerPoint slides from this organization that is quite young but has been existing for some years already.
That sounds like a lot of PowerPoint.
That would enable me to talk for 1 week, day and night. Or do you want me to share my thoughts in an ad hoc manner to your questions? And then out of politeness and maybe practical reasoning, you asked me not to show slides, but to share my thoughts about this. So I'm happy to do this now. And I hope we can share some insight about it. So Gilles, thank you for showing some slides about EIT-ICT Labs, so the basic outline should be known to everybody. Let me add to that there are some features that are kind of unique of EIT-ICT Labs. One thing, for example, is that we treat education, research and business, transfer to business in an integrated way. So no other initiative from Europe actually has this integrated approach in the way we have it, which is very interesting because in our DNA we have the sustainability thing, the transfer to business aspects, also the innovation and entrepreneurship aspects that have been asked for before. So it's actually in our mission statement and our DNA to tackle those issues. What is also kind of unique is that we are meant to stay forever, at least for very long. That means we are an institution, not just a temporary project. So we have shareholders that come from industry, that come from academia, also from research institutes, and we receive funding and political backing not only by the European Commission, but also by our national governments, which puts us in a unique situation because we can act like a trusted third party between those actors without giving bias either to politics, nor to industry, nor to academia. And we are able to balance this as a trusted third party. So when it comes to test beds, I think this is a kind of unique opportunity that we can offer, and we should build a win-win situation. 1 year ago I gave a talk to a similar setting in the Fire Week. I think that was the name here, Fire Week. And I proposed to work closer together, and out of a rather small idea, a big momentum emerged. And we should talk about that also later on the panel, and I'm happy to receive further questions. So among the statements that have been given earlier by other speakers, I want to address also some other unique features that we have. For example, we want to counterbalance this fragmentation that has been mentioned before. So our mission is actually to counterbalance the whole fragmentation that Europe is suffering from. We are one single market, and by statistics we can say Europe is also the biggest single market. However, it's very fragmented. But using EIT-ICT labs as a connector, as an institutionalized connector, we can defragment this in very many ways. For startups that want to internationalize or want to go global, up to presences for test beds that have a physical location in one of our co-location centers, but that will have outreach far beyond that geography. So we want to be closer to the market. That's our mission, and we want to defragment many things that happen in Europe. So I think it goes without saying that it's very productive to what we are talking about today. So I'm actually responsible for EIT-ICT labs in Germany, which is also kind of a unique setting because in Germany we have a legal entity that takes care of EIT-ICT labs, and I'm the managing director of that. And EIT-ICT labs in Germany receives more than half of its revenue actually from funding outside of the KIC. We have some initiatives from private projects or from our national government. So this is also a situation where we probably can be a front runner, especially in sustainability issues or other things. I've promised to answer to some of those questions, and I'll do this very quickly, although I think time is running already. Right. So the question was, what is changing? What is happening in changing future internet research? What my opinion is about that. I think it is obvious that the whole economy of the world is getting to a more and more networked paradigm. So it's not like a single company does everything and can create a product in the ICT domain on its own. So we have a network value chain with many players. In the same way we have, of course, network innovation and open innovation. It goes without saying. And this is something that's very new. And I think testbeds play a very important role. So testbeds can unleash creativity by partners or by players that have not had access to some technology before to fill some gaps in the open innovation and the open networked economy value chain. And here I see a very important role for testbeds. So unleash creativity, even create a new market. So of course we are addressing with our testbeds existing markets, testing markets, of course. But I think we can bring players to actually play with technology or things we are offering by offering testbeds as a service and giving access to that. What are the most important opportunities for this future internet facility towards 2020? It's not only to play with technology, this is very important and we need that, I'm an engineer myself, so I subscribe that everywhere I go. However, we should also create links to building applications to probably rather non-technical people who reuse technology in an easy way and create applications for those rather technical things that we are doing. So I think this is a major trend that we should follow also. Then of course I want to underline innovation entrepreneurship. So something we do also at EIT-ICT Labs, we have a master school where we offer on top of a technical major an innovation entrepreneurship minor. And bringing those future innovators actually to test beds during the education phase is something we should target also. And this is of course non-exhaustive, so I'm happy to take questions later, but my time for giving this speech is actually over. So talk to you later.
Are you sliding it?
No. Great. Well, I'm one of the token sociologists in the audience and also a historian. Before I come on to that, because I want to just say something about learning, trying to learn some lessons from history and making sure they're not only tragedy and farce, but something more productive. I'm from the city of Manchester. We were also a founding member of the Living Labs as a city administration. I run something called the Manchester Digital Development Agency, which is part of our economic development function as a city, and we concentrate on our 3 digital I's. We support digital inclusion, digital industries and digital innovation. And the lesson from history is very important because last week we had our 20th anniversary conference of when we founded Telecities in 1993, when for many cities this agenda, this idea of the internet or ICTs was perhaps something a bit remote. And it's very interesting to reflect in that period that we've moved from tele-cities to info-cities to intelligent cities to digital cities and now smart cities. Some of my colleagues in the UK also think that's too European, so they come up with future cities just to make sure they're not too European, but that's an entirely different story. And I think what we've learned from that is that we have had too much of going down kind of parallel tracks, and it was 4 years ago that we sat down. We have a European network called Eurocities that represents 150 of the biggest cities in Europe. As I say, we were a founder member of the European Network of Living Labs, and we had increasingly engaged with the FIRE community. And one of the common messages from researchers was, oh dear, the cities don't understand us. And the frustration that we could pick up very clearly from people who had what seemed like brilliant ideas, but they would go along to a city administration, probably the same in regions, and the city administration would say, you know, economic crisis, we can't really deal with this now. And then I'd go to Eurocities meetings and we'd talk with some of the city mayors, and they'd go, God, can't you keep these researchers away? They keep coming up with these new ideas, innovation for its own sake, you know, what do we do? And in fact, there was, you know, a lot of commonality, but really not understanding each other's language. And so it was 4 years ago that we came together, that Eurocities, the FIRE community, and the European Network of Living Labs sat down with the European Commission at the Eurocities office in Brussels and tried to think about what we're aiming for. And actually, it's not difficult, because it's there if you read policy things like the Lisbon Agenda, if you read, most importantly, the Digital Agenda for Europe. It says very clearly what we want. For us as cities, we want smart, inclusive, and sustainable cities. And so everything should be focused on that. It's no good just being smart. And one of the great influences on ours, and if you haven't read it, do, even though it's 3 years old now, is the Institute for the Future, their 2020 roadmap. The only 2020 roadmap we've seen that puts users at the heart of it. And Anthony Townsend, who coordinated that work, his new book is out later this year, and I can't remember what it's called now, but I would urge you to read it, because that has a lot of valuable lessons. And we need to combine that kind of open knowledge, open innovation approach from the States, or broadly North America, with the European social model, because that's the way that we can add the inclusive and the sustainable to the desire to be smart. And I think that's a very, very important lesson when we look forward, because, you know, what will there be in 2020? Well, in a city like Manchester, There might still be an awful lot of people unemployed. It will be an extremely diverse society. We actually have more residents speaking 250 plus languages than London. I think London only has 200 resident groups. So diversity will be a big issue. So the need for jobs and skills and entrepreneurship will be no different then. What will be different is the ability of the public sector to interact and deliver some of these things. In 2016, Manchester City Council will have a budget 1/2, that's 50% of what it was in 2009. And that's because of the reductions as a result of economic crisis. So what do? Do we concentrate 100% of that money just dealing with our legal duties to look after young people, older people, people who are ill, or do we innovate? Do we say that this is actually the prime reason, a prime reason for innovation? And that's what I think we need to do. I think we need to use the way that these three communities, the cities, the living labs and the research communities are working together, put users at the heart of that, but think about what the goal, what is it about your work that contributes to making our cities and communities smart, yes, clearly, but inclusive and sustainable. And if you can't do that, frankly, to be a bit critical, you shouldn't be funded, actually. We should use the money on something else. But if you can, and I know talking to many, and I know many people in this room, I know that's what you want to achieve. You want to see the practical impact. You want to see companies set up. So my final parting shot would be to echo Anthony Townsend's work. Beware smart cities in a box and build smart cities from the ground up. Thanks very much.
Master the slide when we put some of our questions back up, and now I'd like to have a more open-ended and an interactive discussion of. Yeah, you make them promote. What is changing? You know, one thing that popped into my head as we saw hackathons with large numbers of very young and very entrepreneurial next to next generation introduction. Now, can that model be applied in a wider range than just the smart cities as Santander and the other Spanish cities?
For sure. We started with that. Because we are believers of what you guys said, that once you have something, you have to go to the users. You need to use this lean startup methodology, where you really go to the users once you have something. You don't have to wait to have something perfect, that your engineers say, no, let's add this feature because this will break the market, whatever. You have to go, and we have started with the smart cities because it's where we see a lot of public authorities' interest to share the open data, to share the sensors data, etc. Look, for instance, when we went to the city of Seville, they have a lot of open data already available for the citizens. And they say, look, we put all our data in the web, but nobody accesses to them. Because, of course, people don't want raw data in the web. What you need to do is to offer this to young developers, and they will make the nice applications that the citizens will use. That's the point. You need to make the APIs for developers to do what the final users will exploit, let's say.
But you said your winning teams were using all world interfaces and not European interfaces.
Well, they are starting to change. The point is that, I mean, if you are a young developer, for instance, or you are an SME, what you have as standard APIs, de facto APIs and solution bases, you know, they are there, they are massively used, they will be stable, right? They have all the characteristics that an entrepreneur would love to have. And yeah.
Is anyone having trouble hearing this? Because passing microphones around slows things up. And we don't need to pass the microphone around.
But actually it goes to other audience there behind that internet.
Oh, okay. So we have some remote participants. Yeah. Okay.
Summary is that we started with smart cities, but our goal is to have more targets.
So we also be spending on 40. Sorry. otherwise you can't be heard.
But I'm not trying to be heard, I'm only trying to ask the questions. You had a comment.
Do I need to get back?
Sure.
I have a loud voice, but still.
I want to emphasize the importance of hackathon kind of activities, actually for two reasons. One is that people really don't care about data. I mean, a normal person in his with a sane mind doesn't care about data. It's only nerds care about data, and the people care about something which is done with the data. So unless there's something done with the data, they don't understand what the hell is the worth of it. And the same is, when I say people, I mean also decision makers and politicians and everybody else except nerds. So if we want to actually support open approach to public data, etc., we need to also convince the data owners about the value of the approach. And the only way to do it is to prove it through actual working apps and solutions. So it's the best way to get the data open is to organize these camps in which things are done with the data and you show that it's not dangerous, it's okay, something is created which they never have thought, which is totally unique, and so it takes away the fear of the open approach, which is quite inbuilt in the civil servant system and city systems by nature. Open is bad, so it has to be conquered, and this is the best way.
Are there other paths to widening the access to the activities that we do? The education, go ahead.
Funny, I think we may well be having a bit of ESP there. I was going to talk about schools. In Britain, even though we in Manchester have a lot of differences with our current government, well, one thing they have done very well is to tear up the ICT curriculum for schools. We support a network of code clubs in primary schools, so working with 9, 10 and 11-year-old children and with support from their parents, teachers, so on. And that new generation coming through really do have something to offer. So we've heard about the young entrepreneurs, and the same with our hackathon last year. It was actually a group of 19-year-olds who won the top prize. But think of the next generation as well at that stage. I mean, what are we doing in elementary school level as well as high schools? What are we doing about digital manufacturing as well? I mean, how many schools in your area have 3D printing facilities and training programs for the young people to understand 3D printing? And we're just starting it in Manchester, but we understand that there are hundreds of cities across the states who are putting 3D printers into schools and adapting training programs. So, you know, think about that next generation as well as what I would see as the current generation, however young they might be.
Well, while I have the mic, there's one point I would like to make about the cities as well, even though they has been giving quite a good overview already, which is the running a city is a bit of a hellish job, because basically what you have is taxpayers' money, and that's all you have. If you want to do something new, you either have to save from somewhere and use the money for something else, or then you have to keep the economy and the population growing, that you could get more taxpayers' money, and of course the costs also raise with that. So I think some of the ways with which things should be sold to cities, which seem to be some of the emphasis areas in the future internet, is how can the cities be more efficient? First, of course, the target group is the people working for the cities and in the cities. What tools can we give them for them to run their organizations better? And the fact is that the public sector is nowhere near utilizing ICT as the companies are. So there has to be transport there. And the second is, could they empower their citizens to participate in how the city runs itself and bring in more resources by empowering the communities to participate in the way the city functions. And that's a big resource if you think of some crowdsourcing kinds of platforms utilized for the cities, that they could use that as an extra resource. The same is true for SMEs. Could they actually collaborate with a group of SMEs and companies to run the city better and get more resources that way. That's a bit clumsy.
Actually,
I just have the
microphone is empowering.
I just can add the same thing. I don't have to repeat what has been said before. You asked about hackathons. I'm a big fan of hackathons. Future ICT innovation comes from bottom up, so unleashing creativity is something I mentioned. And something we should target is actually use our test beds for empowering creative people to play with it.
Yeah. Well, let's ask whether we have, the instruments is too rigid a term. Do we have the approaches that would broaden the use of experimental infrastructures? We've gotten to the point of open access, and some of the infrastructures that have provided open access realize there's a significant and ongoing support component, but we're not advertising it or making it as exciting as a hackathon. So imagine, can you imagine something between open access for the expert, just decreasing the cost slightly, and open access with a lot of public attention that would increase access? So is there something to be added beyond open access and open calls that would increase the viability or the breadth of usability?
Yes, what we have seen is that it is now way too difficult to use those testbeds. So you need simple tools, simple access to them. Open access is one thing, but simple access is another. And this is the most important. And so it's very simple. I use students here, and I say, go to that testbed and try to use it. After one day, come to me and say, are you laughing with me or not? And that's a problem. So that's in FI-WARE where we are working to. And what I think is, if you have common APIs, then you can have at that hackathons also people who are developing tools for using those testbeds in the way that they see it usable to or user-friendly to use them. For instance, if I'm trying to develop something, I want to use a testbed, I know how I want to use it, and then some people can develop such a tool, and then also other people can use those tools to speak to the testbeds. That's my opinion.
So that's you're saying the scope that you set for yourself in order to be sure that you're broadly accessible is the student who isn't already working for you, the student who wants to try something. And you're restricted to your own immediate area to find such students. Can we look more broadly?
Yeah, well, that was just an example. So, because this is a student is someone who is not experienced with the subjects, and because that should be for a project. There should be just start them, push a button, and be on the testbed and use it. Because they are not the exercise for them is not using the testbed. No, the exercise is doing something which is reasonable.
Can you see ways? Go ahead. Yeah.
I fully agree with you. That is the first thing.
Because one of the things that we learned from taking FI-WARE to the hackathons is how to open the data center, that is our testbed, right? And how to remake all the documentation. I mean, they hate the kind of documentation that engineers in research projects do, and they need another approach. And we are learning the hard way. I mean, after every hackathon, we make a set of conclusions and we say we have to change totally our strategy on this, on the way we offer the lab, because you want simplicity and you want easy access. And one thing that I think that maybe we should consider, you said that there are two powerful instruments, that is open access, hackathons, whatever, plus the open calls. But one thing that I see is that imagine that we have all the things working, right? And we have the testbeds that are simple to access by the developers and the entrepreneurs, etc. What I see is that at least in Europe, in the testbed size, there is a lot of innovation. And there are things that the developer that could help the developers, but they are not aware of. So we would need something like an open access to the added value of the technology that we are doing. Let me go with a practical example. which is not experimental at all anymore. And it's easy for me because you know that I am known as the IPv6 guy of Telefónica. But the point is that IPv6 is something that we spent a lot of efforts, right? I think many faces that know me is because IPv6 projects before, and now we are deploying, right? But so it's not experimental anymore. But the point is that when we do the hackathons, for instance, we had a problem when the platforms want to contact the IoT gateways, for instance, in the hackathon settings, and also with the users that are later in their startups or homes willing to access. And it's something that they didn't know how to solve because they have to configure all the NAT ports, everything. And I said, hey, let's deploy this with IPv6 and then you don't need to do that. And they didn't know about that, but we have been working a lot with that. So there has to be some way to educate these developers that, okay, now you are accessing the testbed, you are accessing everything. Now I will teach you what is the added value of all the work that we are doing behind. So I don't know how it could be, but we should be thinking on that.
It sounds like there hasn't been a forum for people who support hackathons or who support rapid access, rapid and open and simple access to exchange best practices in getting there, or to add those requirements to things that future projects can propose to provide before they discover through their own painful experience that this is useful. What else is changing? Oh, all right. Please.
Two comments. I share your views about the very strong interest of those hackathons and other web design festivals and the like. Maybe we have to take care about the rather one-stop, one-shot character of those type of things. Like a lot of physical gathering things, there is a lot of excitation for a very limited duration of time, and then very quickly, in the seconds that follows, things are going to the atmosphere. It's very difficult to keep the dynamics living for a long period. So the bricks are identified, hackathons or other similar things that create the buzz, that creates the traffic, that create the critical mass, that create the link between the owners, the knowledge people, and the developers people, and the oldest and the youngest, and people interested in technologies and people interested in business development. That's it. But maybe what is very important is to have integrators, hard or soft integrators. I would say platforms like permanent platforms. I'm not talking about permanent cathedrals, permanent open platforms which ensure the continuity in the value chain of support, from the making noise function to the serious business coaching. And this is my second point. I don't personally believe that anybody on earth, even with 5 billion euros of funding, is able to master all elements of this complexity, from the technology to the business modeling and the uncertainties which are more on the downstream segment than on the upstream segment. So I think it's very important that you guys, especially coming from a research and technology background, have the modesty to consider that you might maybe not cover all needed expertise, especially in the business modeling. I know that if you have 20 years in Telefónica, if you have your colleague from WARE, if you have all the skills there in the company, in the corporate, but it's not exactly the same. So be a soft integrator, or find a way to integrate in a value chain of skills, others even smaller business objects that can be public or private, that can really be giving the missing advice, the missing support to those young, excited hackathons participants. That, and what next? What next? So of course, in stating like this, I'm talking about a structured incubation and acceleration process. But I also highlight the fact that it might not be a very common expertise. So I get it.
The pathway that you're describing, exists in the American startup culture. That is combinators, accelerators, incubators, etc. And we're proving good here in Europe at doing bigger things that move faster than traditional companies that have to protect the existing markets, but not at smaller things that have lasting impact. So the impact, there's certainly examples of getting the impact, and now the word lasting is missing. You had
A word about the ecosystem. It's SMEs and developers do have a love-hate relationship to the big ecosystem players, companies like Apple and Google and Nokia, etc. By nature, of course they do, because they need to partly twist to their terms to make their own business running. Maybe that's one of the things in which European companies, if I take an example of Nokia, we know the story at the moment. One thing Apple has never done is to launch something, attract developers in, and turn it off in 2 years' time. And that's something Nokia did repeatedly. Nokia actually supported more open approach for code, but they didn't support, they didn't sort of respect that somebody else invested in the platform they had built. Think of Ovi Store or Nokia Music. Apple would never think of turning off iTunes because they know that there's lots of companies, lots of their ecosystems dependent. So you can actually trust on it, even you hate it. They are pretty crappy negotiation partner, but still it will be there. And I think that's something which, if I think of the future internet initiatives, how do we provide the continuity for the companies which are willing to invest their resources in these platforms? One way, of course, is to, if we support open source, when something is dropped by Telefónica, it can still go on. If it's not open source, it will not. And that's something the companies are increasingly wary of. They really dig into the licensing and the proprietary levels. And they are very, very reluctant to touch something which is proprietary. That is just the case. And they actually don't trust big players in this, because big players have a bad history in keeping up these resources. If they can turn them off in a whimsy by change of business plan, and then your businesses are down the drain, and they know that it happens.
I hope we still have time to follow up with a remark on this question. So what we need, I just expand to what has been said before, is a one-stop shop, something like this, decrease complexity, and introduce SLA and quality of service to this. It's not very easy. I mean, if you know from production perspectives, offering very good SLAs is one of the most costly things. It costs more than building and testing or whatsoever if you do this over years. But those are the things that are missing. Another thing, talking about ecosystems, when we want to unleash creativity and bring people to those test beds that have not followed it before, we can think a little bit how Apple did it with their App Store, which was the first really successful one. They didn't really invent a thing new. Something that was new was what they did better is actually decrease complexity, add joy of use and better usability, and then of course offer a certain quality of service. And then suddenly we had programmers and whatsoever who were developing apps for this ecosystem that had not doing this before. This is a very big barrier we have to go over, but I think it's about time to do it. So, well, that's no
so the Apple App Store has an entry point, which is the free app, and that tests an awful lot of ideas are tested in that. Try it, and if you like it, maybe I'll get convinced to build something that I can sell for a small profit. And keeping, lowering the floor, lowering the entry barriers is something we should adapt to the world of collaborative research in Europe. We haven't talked about technology and research trends. If I pass the mic around, will I get...
Yes,
okay.
I have a question because I hear that we need to target simplicity, but then we say we need to add. So we need to make a choice. Either you add and you have more complexity, or you need to simplify. And the question is, probably one of the questions that we need to answer is, what is the minimum level of investment in terms of APIs, interconnections in between the different testbeds that are needed in order to increase actually the participants. And so rather than to be maximalistic in the requirements we put, how can we be minimalistic so that you're lowering the barrier? What is the minimum level that we need for ensuring that a student, which has probably not the knowledge that several people have here in the room, but also the experts, can find satisfaction in accessing in using the facilities? So there is one question about what is the minimum, and then what are the necessary conditions to be met, and the sufficient conditions to be met. And I think this goes back to open simple. Those are necessary conditions, but are not very sufficient conditions, because you will expect certainly something more out of it. And what are their part is something which is still open, I believe.
Sure, Mr. Tamay. One important aspect, you are mentioning integration, and I think FED4FIRE, for instance, is a very good project to integrate existing testbeds. Very good practice that we have from another domain of research within the European Commission on IoT is a cluster, which brings together the different research projects to cooperate, to exchange, and to work on specific topics like interoperability, architecture, and so on. I think that's something that could be pushed forward by AmpliFIRE, for instance, to really provide a platform for the different testbed-related research or projects in Europe to work together, to discuss together, to find common grounds, find ways to integrate the different resource solutions together. Perhaps sometimes to fragment what we are doing. For instance, if we have a project, if we have a platform, there are some enablers which could be fragmented and taken out of a specific project to be shared with other projects and to become a common enablers. And that requires interactions, ongoing interactions within the project. So again, I think this meeting is a very good opportunity, and I hope it will be just a first step into a more integrated cooperation among European research projects and testbeds.
So that I presume would be added to the project, the small project, European-funded project, is very focused, has a strong timeline, and of course is reviewed on its success as initially defined, to some extent on its ability to adapt. The cluster concept brings together small companies which are in a very changeable and very rapidly evolving portion of their development. It'd be interesting to see if the kind of cluster support of rapidly developing small companies could also be extended as a model for adding support to research projects to help them to integrate better without asking them to do everything they started to do plus more, which most projects sensibly refuse to do. So this might be a way of adding that extra incentive. Yeah.
Just a remark about the resource. I think the trick of the European research clusters that basically the European Commission is imposing that each of the new projects is definitively clearly defined the resource into the project to support the cluster. That means that obviously if you have to support the cluster, I think on your own resource, that's quite a problem. So for each project, they say at the beginning there is a collective negotiation and say, okay, we have to participate to these 8 activities. And you are even in the door, you have to be sure that you follow up on that. And that gives enough resource for everybody to attend, to travel, and to provide the resource. We have 8 activity chains, but each activity chain has a very its own horizontal coordination. Maybe it's something that could be good for the FI community, not only having a mega FI board, but maybe having some activity chain. For instance, we talk about the federation. We know FED4FIRE is doing that. Maybe we can also, that all the project can maybe participate. Can be innovation and user involvement. Can be another
activity chain, we call it, and so on. We can have several ideas. So, but at some point in time, for the coming project, we can put in place this mechanism by which each project is committed to contribute.
That has been tried as well. And it could be tried more intensively or tried with a better sense of the easy and hard parts for it to be successful. But in the early part of the FIRE project, there were designated portions of the budget for interaction among the projects. And without a clear sense of how that was to be done and why it would benefit each project, it's hard to make that effective. So we need to learn to use ab initio incentives at the starts of projects, as opposed to a structure that comes around them and helps them during the project, is something we still haven't. There are trade-offs, and they aren't fully explored yet. And
for instance, in theory, we don't have any commitment. I think I'm talking about our commitment in the door. In the door, from the very beginning, we know the name of horizontal activities the file want to animate. For instance, you can have users and privacy or user involvement. You can have federation, whatever. And then in the door, you are committed to work on it. It is different because, for instance, now we are going just on dissemination resources, normal interaction resources, but the commitment is very low. It's not the same.
But in practice, this is what happens, because you want to experiment something, a new artifact, a new algorithm, a new component. If you expect that actually you may be relying on what exists in order to test something new, they don't know about it. How can you serve their needs? So what has happened is, in practice, the best that we can expect is that they shorten the time in which we can make the experiment. But having the facility itself providing all the tools for you to test your own algorithm doesn't exist. They can't anticipate what the needs will be within a couple of months or even 1 or 2 years. So we are actually providing components. The key question becomes how to make use of and take benefits of what has been developed by the projects individually for the next stages. Is there a mean by which we can retrofit these developments and say, fine, we have been developing this measurement tool, we have been developing this system performance, we have been developing this way of controlling how the interface we have, can it serve for the next stages? That's one possibility.
Yeah, so I want to answer also your previous question. So it was about the simplicity. What I said was that the tools that an experimenters use should be simple if they want to, but they can be complex if they want to too. However, the implementation on the testbeds and the APIs are not simple. They should cover as much features as possible. But to give a very simple example, I'm a student, I want to test with networking between 2 hosts. I should be able to go to the website, put in my email, choose on a topology of 2 resources, virtual machines connected by 1 link, click on the button, and 5 minutes later I'm an SSH connection to that. And I have seen that last week here demonstrated at our site. So you can cover some experimenters with that. However, there are, of course, very experimenters who do very complex experiments, and they will use other tools. And what we are seeing is that specific communities do use specific tools. So you have, for instance, communities doing things with clouds. They are looking at applications and software. However, you also have communities doing networking research, and those are more interested in defining topologies and connecting hosts together.
Yeah.
For instance, having layer 2 connections between racks with a certain bandwidth or delay specific properties. And I think by just having the common API layer, people can develop those tools. So if you're a community and you say, or a project, and you say, well, I want to use those testbeds, but I do not have a tool which does it for me. You can develop it yourself. Or you can start from another tool which already does most of what you want and add to that. And those are things what we see in the future. And your other question was regarding, for instance, measurements. That's what we have done in FI-WARE is you look what is available. And then, for instance, for measurements, you have OML library of Australia, which is not Europe, but it does its job. And then you say, well, it is usable for a lot of testbeds. well, we make it deployed on all the testbeds, so experimenters know what they can expect. Of course, if they are in favor of another measurement tool, they can just use the other measurement tool. But there is one which is supported by all testbeds. And this is how we see it in Test for Fire.
Let's take two more questions, and then I think we're getting hungry.
Since we're speaking about common APIs for the testbed, so what is the current state of alignment between the API and FI-WARE and Test for Fire? So both have this, vision for integrating with testbed. If I come to you as a testbed owner that is faced with the decision, what kind of adapter or whatever I would like to implement to be compatible with the future vision of Fire, in which direction should I go?
Well, actually, this is a work to be done, right? Because what we offer is the cloud, is open source, is based on OpenStack, right? So I think it follows what the people would expect from the open perspective, to deploy their virtual machines, connect them to the different enablers, etc. And the work to be done now would be to work together with them to say, this is the way we found it's easy to be used by the people in the hackathons and the SMEs that are getting involved also in the hackathons. And how we could complete this with all the features that you think that we don't have and we should implement, right? But specifically in the case of the APIs for the cloud, I think the work down is quite open because it's based on OpenStack. In the IoT, well, there is a gateway side and a backend side. Well, in FI-WARE, we would like to see more open source enablers. That is the truth, right? The Telefónica's coordinator, we would like to push for that. But as I said before, we are dealing with assets that are key assets for companies. And then this is the real life. You cannot convince a company. Actually, for instance, one of the backend enablers of IoT in FI-WARE is provided by Telefónica and it's not open source. We are trying to change that, but actually it's the way it is at this point, right? But for instance, at the gateway side, we are trying to work more with things like Raspberry Pi, open software based on the Raspberry Pi for some gateways, etc. So we are trying to work that way, at least in the gateway, right? But still a lot of work to do as well. But our main goal is to go first with what we have and test. Because later, remember that in FI-WARE, what we standardize somehow is the open APIs, right? So if later somebody says, I don't like the asset from this company, whatever company, I mean, for instance, Telefónica, I don't like the asset of Telefónica in backend, you have all the open APIs, and you can develop yourself, or you can evolve an open source solution to target that open API, and then do it yourself, and it will work exactly as the other enabler work.
If I may add, as you know, this exercise started 2-3 years ago. But then everybody understood that, for instance, open source was the main issue. For instance, from the second phase, but especially from the third phase, the technology foundation that will come next year, now there is a common understanding among industries and the Commission that everything will be open source with common API. So this is let's say, a commitment and a condition, as was discussed before, about collaboration. So there are certain conditions that should be put in the general call, in the general program, and this will be completely fulfilled in the third phase, but for instance also XiPi, all the software and the tools that we are developing are open source and published. So, and this is the step to go in this direction.
Well, one more question. Who feels most strongly? Please, go ahead.
No, I was just making again a statement about if this morning we learned about one of the vision can be 50% SME entrepreneur, and if we want really to do that, we need to change quite a lot, because also in the MiFi project we try to look at what could be the exploitation, sustainability, what are exactly the activity for each testbed, and finally what we learned that it's a nice research community working for researchers. Most of you are the members themselves. Now we have this open core that is adding a lot of, let's say, experiment because they are funded, but there are much more to come. I think out of 50 proposals we fund 2. So we need to, if we really want to change, we have to look at differently in terms of how to collaborate and how to expand to SMEs. And for that, yes, we need, for instance, what was suggested to organize some, because we cannot have a mega, let's say, coordination. We might have to split into different issues, like for instance, maybe how we can have SME, how we can have users, maybe how we can federate and whatever, like different issues. And maybe we need to find a way that also we exploit all the nice idea coming to each of the test beds. Again, when I have the open call, I think there is a mine. When you see 50 proposals, maybe 30 are more than excellent. Okay, then what happened to this 28 not funded? Maybe nobody do. Maybe we can. At some point in time, we ask them, do you agree that maybe an extract of that can be public? So we can have a public, we can have a brokerage space where we can maybe, because when we see maybe proposal for Fed for FI, sometimes oriented cloud, maybe that can fit to Bonfire or to others. We see that a lot of similarity between the projects. So it should be good to put in place a more efficient mechanism to exchange information, that is for sure, and also to involve not only the research community, because even a few years ago when I tried to go in this file, even I was in ENoLL, it was for me a very close community, and I still believe it's not everybody is in, it's still between researchers. Okay, oh nice, I think we have to do protocols, but how many people are working on the new network protocols? And I think that's not so much. When we check on that, not so much. We need now to exploit and to have a mix of exploitation of our test bed for researcher and test bed for something else, because it's a huge investment and can make a lot of benefit from the test bed for more, and then for this SME. So I think we need to have an electroshock and to change a bit the way that we collaborate with the other community.
I'm interested that you say test beds for experts and test beds for a broader class of users, and it's probably true that some test beds are narrow in the usage that they'll support, and others are closer to the eventual marketplace. And if they believe they are closer to the eventual marketplace, they need to invest in supporting a much broader class of users and getting the following, the broad following that leads to being something that really changes our world. That requires doing things other than research. And maybe we have to step up to it, understand it, review projects at their outset to make sure that they have that breadth. Anyway, I'd like to thank the panelists and the audience for interacting.